Welcome to the Pro Aging Podcast. I'm Steve Gurney, founder of the Positive Aging community. We're thrilled to have you join us for interactive discussions with pioneers and thought leaders on a wide variety of topics related to aging and longevity. These insightful discussions and the Positive Aging Sourcebook are brought to you thanks to the support from our Positive Aging community champions. Visit proaging.com to connect with them and discover hundreds of valuable other resources. We're excited to have you with us today, so let's jump into an engaging Positive Aging live and interactive discussion. All right, folks, today I am here with Beth Pinsker, who is the author of My Mother's Money. And this is a brand new book out that is talking about the financial challenges and opportunities centered around elder care and all the senior living planning that we talk about on our platform. Beth, I am thrilled to have you here today. Congrats on the new book. And before we dive into the book, let's get to know you a little bit better. Tell us a little bit about your background and what led to you writing this book.
Hi, everybody. I'm Beth Pinsker. I am a columnist at MarketWatch as my day job. I'm a retirement columnist and financial planning columnist. I got the CFP designation in 2018. I was at Reuters at the time, writing a similar column. And I wanted to do it because it would further my education as a journalist and really allow me to dig into the subject matter. So I don't see clients and I don't manage anybody's money. I just write about this stuff for educational purposes and to help guide people through holistic planning from a writing perspective. I think that too many things focus on the specifics of investment management and not enough on the whole picture of somebody's finances.
I love it. Now, let's start with the title, My Mother's Money. Is that literal or general? Was your mother an inspiration in this book?
So it is literally my mother's money. So the book is a narrative. It's my story taking care of my mom. And I wasn't her hands-on physical caretaker. I took care of her money, which is a position that a lot of people in the sandwich generation, younger baby boomers, older millennials, that we get this task thrown upon us to maybe not, bathe somebody or manage their medications, but we have to take care of the household bills. We have to manage the nest egg and try to make sure it doesn't dwindle. So for my mom, I got that call that everybody gets, and that's where the book starts. My mom was going to have spinal surgery, and she needed me to come and take over for her, like all the things that she, as a 76-year-old adult woman, had to do. And she was living a very full life in Florida, 1,000 miles away from where I lived. And, how many of us are in this position? There are 63 million of us in the country doing some sort of task like this right now. So, there's a lot of us out there who get involved in this kind of care. So my mom had surgery, and then there were lots of complications, and she went through about 8 or 9 months of ups and downs. And so, like, pretty fast upon her having surgery, I had to just take over. She wasn't in any position to be paying bills. She wasn't in any position to be moving money around, making money decisions, doing anything that needed to be done. But we had to decide where she was going to go from stage to stage as her illness progressed. And then, then she passed away, sadly. And then I was the person who had to administer the estate, which if you've ever been tasked with this for a family member, is just an enormous responsibility and very time consuming. So
So
from start to finish, it was about a little over a year of me doing this. And so that was a nice time frame to tell a story in a book form.
I love it. And now um, this helps me understand the organization of the book because it's broken in through five parts. Part one is getting started, getting that phone call. Part two is the costs of care. Part three is how to make that money last. And part four is settling the estate. And then part five, we've got workbooks and things of that nature in the book. And so, what a great way to put it together with that personal narrative. Now, let me ask you a couple of questions before we dive into the book in a little bit more detail. But was your was my family, we don't talk about money. Okay, like I was taught that, like I remember wanting to know how much my parents made, and that was off limits, and you don't talk about that. And here I am now, 60 years old, and talking about money with my parents is taboo. But then we basically, the door opens as in your narrative, and all of a sudden you got to be a detective and figure out where everything is at. Was What kind of family did you grow up? Was talking about money something that was off limits, or?
Yeah, I didn't know how much my parents made at any stage of their life until both of them were gone, and I inherited my mom's box of tax returns that she had very neatly labeled going back to like the 1950s and her first job as a soda fountain jerk in ice cream parlor. Um, and I had no idea. I had no idea how much money they had saved. I had no idea what she was spending her money on. I had no idea what happened to her finances after my father died. I had no idea when they had taken Social Security for the first time. Nothing. I had no clue about anything. And the purpose of this book was to say, if you don't have these discussions, if you don't work through my narrative and see what I had to go through, you're going to end up in the same place, and it's really hard. But if you see what happens to somebody when you have to step in to those shoes, then you're going to say, okay, I understand now. I understand, like, you're going to get through all those four chapters. You're going to get to the workbook, and like, you're actually going to fill it out because now you understand why you have to do all these things. And so many people get that binder. I go to financial conferences all the time, and I ask the financial planners how many, and the elder planners, the lawyers, how many times have you given a binder to a client to fill out information and they've died with it on their desk not filled out? And the
Yeah.
hands go up. The
Well,
hands always go up. People don't like to fill out this information. They don't like anybody to know it. They don't like to spend the time to do it. It's a mess if you don't. Like I had to step into that mess and it was hard.
and the other thing is that even if they fill out the binder, um I think people are more comfortable giving that to their lawyer or their financial planner who they barely know. Um but the idea of talking about this to the people that are going to have to administer their caregiving or come in and settle their estate, we really need to figure out how we can shift the culture. Now, that that being said, before we hit the record button, and we were talking about fraud and all the fraud that's being committed, especially with the technology that's out there now. And we know that a lot of fraud is being committed by people in our circle. Obviously, we want to be careful about revealing our finances if we don't have loved ones that are trustworthy. So that's a key
Yeah.
element.
That is a
But
key element. But so for me, this all comes down to the key message of my book. It's right there in the introduction. This is all about love. Um, the reason that you would tell anybody this information is because you love them and you don't want them to have a hard time. You don't want them to have a hard time taking care of you, for instance. Like that shouldn't be the burden, an extra burden. Like you being sick is enough of an emotional burden for your adult children. You don't need the additional burden of them having a really hard time with the mechanics of it. Like take that mechanics picture out, like take that out of the picture and let them just deal with you and your relationship. Now, if there isn't love involved, then you have a different picture that you're dealing with. One of the legal protections involved here is if you take the right steps, then people have a legal responsibility that they're accepting when they are helping you, and that there are receipts and oversight to that process. And so if you do it off the books and you don't, and there's sort of just doing whatever needs to be done um, in the moment without any of the legal authority required to do it, then you get into trouble. Um, People often take this shortcut of putting their kids, like they think the big solution to all of this is adding their kids as a joint signer on their bank accounts. And that like handles all of their problems. In the situation you're talking about with fraud, that creates all the problems. If you add somebody to your bank account, they own it just as much as you do, and they can do anything they want without any oversight. If you put them on as power of attorney, um, there is a fiduciary responsibility there. They can be held to account for that, and they can be removed. So that's where power, if you don't know what somebody's going to do with that responsibility, if you don't quite trust them, never add them as a joint signer. And then you get into problems like what if you added one kid as a joint signer, but not your other kid? And the other kid is like, well, what the hell is that kid doing with mom and dad's money?
Mhm.
Where's all the money going? If they're a joint signer, there's no responsibility on them to like tell the other kid what they're up to. And then when the mom or dad dies, they immediately get that account handed over to them. If mom and dad put in their will, I split my bank account between my two children equally, but one kid is a joint signer on the account, it goes to the kid who's the joint signer on the account, regardless of what the will says.
Wow.
So if that kid is the power of attorney on the account instead, then it passes to whatever is said in the will or the trust. Um, or the beneficiary designations on the account. With a bank account, it's better off if you have beneficiaries named. But if one is a joint owner, that supersedes the beneficiary designations even. So like you gotta if you don't have like a lot of these rules work best for happy families,
Yeah.
and they're tricky for unhappy families. And you go find me a purely happy family and I will give you $1,000 bonus. Like there are no such things in this country. Like we all have unhappy families of some sort. And
Hmm.
so you need to have protections in place. And one of the protections that you can have in place is the proper legal documentation of all of these relationships and responsibilities. If you're just trying to wing it, you're going to get in trouble.
So now, what I like, chapter 3 is start with the final resting place. And I was just talking to somebody about this the other day, is that where do I start with all this? They're, going to seminars and people are talking about, care and stuff. And I said, we're all going to die. Okay. And you've got to just start getting comfortable with talking that way because actually, when you start talking and planning about the fact that you're going to die, you're really talking about how you want to live up to that point. And so, if you work backwards from that, it can make a lot of these conversations and decisions a little bit easier. I'd love to hear your insight with starting at the final resting place.
So for my mom, this was a pure act of love. My mom started with her final resting place because that to her was the hardest decision she had to deal with other family members that she was responsible for.
Huh.
And if you think about it, the most loving thing you can do for family members is take a hard decision off their plate. The decision on what to do with somebody who has died has to be made in like the first half hour after they stop breathing. And
Hmm.
you are a mess, right? So, like, my mom had this all set up so that when she passed, I had a phone number, and all I had to do was call the phone number. When the hospice team comes in, the very first question they ask is, what's going to happen to this person? They're the hospice team. They know this person's going to die, right? And they make no bones about it. Tell me the number that we're supposed to call when this person passes. And so if you don't do that for somebody, like if you don't do that for the ones that love you, in the first half hour after you stop breathing, when they can barely, function, they're gonna have to make a real estate deal.
Mm.
you know like they're gonna have to start calling places and find some place to put you, or some place, some facility that's gonna take you for cremation or what have you. And the most loving thing you can do in the universe is take care of that for yourself. Have some sort of instruction, have some sort of plan. And my mom did it because the very last experience she had with that was when my father died. And she had a general plan. Like, we had a family plot, that had been in the family for a very, very long time. She had a number to call. She called the number. She set everything up. We have the funeral. We go to the gravesite. She looks down, and they put my dad in the wrong spot.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Yeah, uh-oh. And the person whose spot he had was standing right there. Um,
Holy cow.
yeah,
Boy,
and
I've never
so
heard a story like that. Yeah.
yeah, actually, I have heard stories like this. It's something that happens quite frequently. There's a stand-up comedian who does a one-woman show in New York, and the same thing happened to her father or mother when they had a death in the family. It happens. It happens more than you think because people don't talk about this stuff, you know? And so there's a map of the family plot, and there are numbers assigned, and the person who was supposed to go in that particular spot was set up for a reason so that she could be next to her other family members. And then my dad would come in, and then my family would start in the next plot over. Well, they messed it all up. And, my mom and this person are standing right there looking down into the ground and going, what are we supposed to do now? And they had to make some decisions right then and there. It was very painful for my mother. Um, and she made sure, like, for the next 5 years, she went and called every cousin who had a remaining interest in that plot. She bought people out. She solidified the plan. She had the map all marked up. And so when I got this folder, her space where she was supposed to go was highlighted in yellow. She had made calls to the funeral place and the cemetery beforehand, and she had said, when I die, I am going in this spot that's marked with the yellow. Please make sure that that's where I go. Um,
Wow.
so that I didn't have to worry about that, so that I did not walk up to her gravesite at her funeral and have a disaster on my hands.
Man, well, what a nice, loving gift that your mom gave you. And but if she didn't see the disaster with your dad, it could have been that radically different. Um, okay, part two is the cost of care. But before we talk about the cost of care, because that's something we talk about a lot on this platform, and most of our community members know the difference between assisted living and nursing and hospice and this, that, and the other. One of the main problems, though, is yes, this is can be costly, and you need to know various ways to navigate it. But the fact of the matter is, nobody wants it. Like, so the phrase that I hear on a daily basis is, "Oh, don't ever put me in one of those homes." And out of curiosity, what was your mom's attitude on sort of when you needed to find care providers for her?
My mom was very big on privacy, and so what her main concern was having a private room in any situation that she could be in. So she primarily wanted to be at home, but her illness was very quick. So when she was in the hospital, she went from the hospital to rehab. And rehab is a step that a lot of people go into as a next step. It's not even a long-term nursing care situation. The maximum you can get under Medicare is 100 days, and most people don't get those 100 days. So this is where most families come into it, in this sort of similar circumstance. You're in the hospital for 3 days or more, you qualify for rehab. It's often a very scary prospect to go from the hospital straight back to home. People often fail at that. They go home and they have an emergency. They need more care than that, and they aren't set up for it at home. And so that was the situation with my mom. She had to go to rehab. So her main ask of me was find a rehab where I could have my own room. Right? Very, very difficult to find, especially covered by Medicare.
No, no, exactly. And often because I've was helping somebody else navigate this as well, it's kind of that's where and your next chapter is looking at the money, but it's one of these things. Hey, if a private room is important to you and you can contribute to this, you may be able to get your rehab. Uh, but if you're Medicare, very difficult to get a private room.
Very difficult. There was one place that had the situation that she wanted near her that took Medicare patients. And you don't automatically get into these places. So we had to like apply for her through the hospital social workers. They sent over her application and she got rejected. Um, and it was because she needed too much care for them. Like her care level was too high. So we were paying for private aides on top of, the hospital care, and we were going to send those private aides with her to the rehab. But I wasn't sure that that message had gotten across that, like, yes, my mom needs a significant amount of care, but we're paying for these private aides to come with her. So she really won't be that much of a problem, and she doesn't have any cognitive decline. But the hospital treats any old person like they have cognitive decline. So I rolled the dice. And I outlined, this is the story I tell in the book. Like I rolled the dice. I'm telling this as a story. Like this is what happened. I called the administrator myself. I'm a reporter. I just call people all day long, right? Like I don't mind picking up the phone. I can call and ask for the president. Um, that doesn't bother me. So I called and I got the administrator on the phone and I said, we have these private aides coming. I know my mom looks bad on paper, but she's a really with it lady. And if you give her a chance, this is the place she wants to go. And I said, can I put you on the phone with her? And my mom was not with it most of the time at this stage of things. She was on a lot of medication. She had
Yeah.
a really big surgery. She was having a hard time. But like, I was like, we're gonna have to gamble. And she's like, okay. I walk into the room. I'm like, Mom, will you talk to this lady at this facility and tell her how much you want to go there? And my mom got on the speakerphone and she's like, "Oh, I so much want to come to your facility. It's my friend went there and it's the nicest place and I think I would really do well there and I'm coming with my aides and I won't be any problem at all." And who's going to say no to a little old lady?
Well, especially in the fact that somebody who runs a rehab and long-term care uh, center, they've never heard those words. It's sort of like, oh, I really want to come there. It's mostly, no, I don't want to go there. So, great strategy. And
Yeah.
and what I like about that too is I tell people the first when you're touring any setting like this, the most important thing is looking at the other residents and the other people that are there and trying to find, do I have a connection here with these folks? Okay. But the second most important person to connect with is the administrator. They truly are the captain of the ship. And the culture that they are leading goes down to that person that is giving mom a bath or helping us into the bathroom. Great strategy there. Now, as you outline this, and you said right from the get-go that things went kind of quickly with your mom, right? But I like in chapter three, how to make the money last. Part three, chapter 20, calculate your burn rate, and also chapter 21, make peace with spending money. Let's dive into to that because I think those are two very important things.
Yeah, that's where the title of the book comes in. My mother's money. My mom was really careful with her money. She was a public school teacher for her whole career. My dad was a teacher too, as a college professor. They were those small town America save, save, save people. They didn't do crazy stuff. They didn't live a crazy lifestyle. And so the amount of money that she was spending at the end of her life was so far out of bounds of what our normal life spending was. Money was just pouring out the door faster. Like, I live in New York. We're used to spending a little bit more money than other people because things are expensive here. But it was like so much more than my regular budget. Like, I had no idea what to do with this money that was just hemorrhaging from her nest egg. and she didn't either. But I, as a CFP, I can do the math on the advanced, calculators, because this is not the way I try to explain to people is this is not simple addition and subtraction. You cannot do this with the calculator, the regular calculator on your phone, right? If you have $500,000 and you're spending $15,000 a month, you're not just simply taking $15,000 out each month because the money is growing at the same time. Your rate of spending is constantly changing. You have some bills that are monthly, some bills that are yearly and quarterly, and money's just going this way and that. And it's very hard to keep for a regular person to keep track of multiple changing scenarios, and figure out how much safety they have in that nest egg. But there are equations that can do it, and I show how to do it on the in the book. I think it's page 121. I had this out the other day for an interview. Um, let's see. Uh,
Well,
yeah,
and
here we
then
go. Here we go. This is how this chart shows on page 121 how long $500,000 will last if you are spending $15,000 a month, and the answer is a little over 3 years. So, you have to really know how much the person has at their disposal, know how much they're spending and what that rate of spending could be, and then you sort of have to put those numbers into an advanced financial calculator, and it spits out like a time frame for you. For my mom, we had two separate time frames we were looking at. One was cash on hand. My mom had taken her required minimum distribution in December of the year that she got sick. So she had surgery in November, a big chunk of money dumped into her account in December, and she would usually spend down that amount of money all year until the next December, and then she would take her next big chunk of money. Well, we were spending too fast, and that money was going to run out in August instead of December. And so I needed to put my hands on more cash, or it was going to have to come out of my pocket, um, to cover it. And so first we had to look at how much cash do we have on hand, and then you've got her Social Security coming in and her pension coming in, and so you have to do a budget. Like, this is the money we have coming in, this is the money we have going out. Here's how much cash. We're going to last 2 months of cash, and then we need cash. And then it was longer term. How long can she stay in this situation? How long can we afford to have her home, paying X amount of money, and before we have to think about selling her apartment and moving her to a facility or making other hard decisions? And this is what real people are up against. It depends on how much you have in the bank to begin with, before you have to get to some of the harder decisions.
yeah,
At the end of the day, there's Medicaid.
right, and that's the variable that we're like. I mean, it's horrible losing any of our loved ones, but if the window of failing health and rehab is shorter, uh, it certainly makes things better from this financial planning. But that's this crystal ball that none of us know. Your mom could have potentially gone on for 3, 4 years, and now you're really starting to get to the danger zone on your calculator. A couple of things I want to talk about, but before we talk about Medicaid, because everybody is just sort of like, well, if I run out of money, then Medicaid will pick it up. The thing that you had mentioned was I was you was going to have to write a check for mom's care. And that's like a line in the sand that I'm always trying to make people aware of. Is this really what you want to do? Do you want to sacrifice your own future to help mom?
It's a very big line in the sand. Most of the big money that I had to lay out for my mom, I knew would come back to me eventually. But I was
Mhm.
writing some very big checks along the way that I had to, because we couldn't put our hands on her money some of the time. In the very beginning, it was because I hadn't enacted the power of attorney. And within the first 3 weeks of taking care of her, I had to write out a premium check for her long-term care insurance that got messed up that was almost $7,000. So I had to come up with $7,000 of my own cash to pay them, knowing that when the paperwork got sorted out, which took about 4 months, I would get that money back, right? I was pretty confident that that would come back to me. So, but a normal person has a hard time freeing up $7,000.
Mhm.
There were other times where the caregiver, like right after my mom died, her bank account got locked down faster than we thought. I thought we would have a week. We had 2 days. And so one of the caregivers didn't cash their severance check. And so I had to pay the severance check out of pocket because we had access in that 2 week period after somebody dies. You like get cut off from everything. Like the bank
Mhm.
accounts get locked down. You can't write a check on their account. You have to wait for the death certificates to do stuff. So in that like period of time while we were waiting for the death certificates and the life insurance and whatever else money was coming in, I had to write checks to the caregivers and cover those out of my pocket, knowing that the money would eventually be there, but still we didn't have access to it right then. And I think people don't realize how often there are these little periods of lockouts where you don't have access to the sick person's own money, and
Mhm.
somebody's got to step up. Like when somebody dies and you have to transport the body from place A to place B, like they die in their home and you have to even just send them over to the funeral parlor to get cremated or something. Like there's a cost to that. Somebody's got
Yeah.
to say, okay, I'll be responsible for that. I will pay for it. And, not everybody in the world has people who are able or willing to do that.
Yeah, and what I mean, these are real costs and they can really impact somebody's a loved one's long-term financial plans or just living expenses. But what often concerns me is when families are like, well, mom doesn't want to go to X Medicaid nursing home, but we're going to pay for the assisted living that she wants to go to. And, 10 years later, you're still writing those checks. You've sacrificed your future, no matter who you are.
I'll tell
That's
you
a
a
big
story
issue.
from the book. So one of the stories I tell in the book, because I didn't experience everything myself, so I leaned on other people who had the experiences that filled in the gaps. So one person I interviewed had been paying for her mom to be in memory care with her husband as a family expense. It was her mom though. Years go by. They started out paying, I don't know, $9,000, $10,000 a month, and then she got divorced.
Hmm.
And then the husband all of a sudden didn't want to be chipping in for his ex-mother-in-law's memory care. And so this woman, was now on her own and she had to decide, can I cover this cost on my own without, the second income in the family? And if I can't, then what happens? Because the facility where the mom was, the assisted living, didn't take Medicaid. And that's what a lot of people face is like their loved one is in a facility that they're paying for, and when the money runs out, they don't take Medicaid. And so she had to move her mom from that memory care to one that took Medicaid. And this the
Which is
story,
going to be a nursing home that
yeah.
with somebody with dementia. Yeah.
So she went looking for recommendations. She called one of those services that are out there that provide recommendations and didn't realize that they are like a paid referral service. So she was only getting the referrals that they were being paid to make, and she didn't like any of them. And she was at a bagel shop in her neighborhood complaining to her friend over lunch about this situation. And somebody from another table leaned over and said, I'm sorry, don't mean to interrupt. I don't mean to be nosy, but I heard what you were saying. You should go check out this place down the road. They take Medicaid, and I'm happy with it. My mom is there. Um, and she called, and like that's where her mom ended up. Like that's how like every single person in the universe is going through this in some capacity every day,
Mhm.
and we all have to help each other.
I love it. Okay, we talked a little bit about in the beginning about part four, which is settling the estate. And I think our whole conversation has really reiterated that folks start having the conversation, communicate to people in advance, uh, so that our loved ones, the people that are following us, don't have to, they can go through a better environment. Um, but let me ask you something. Like we've talked about a lot, and I tell you, I'm going to have you on a bunch, Beth, because this is a really important topic. But for our first conversation here, what is there anything that we haven't talked about today that you'd really like our positive aging community members to be aware of?
Well, one thing I wanted to say is I intended for this to be an ongoing conversation with people. Like, my book doesn't cover every circumstance, it doesn't cover everything that people are going through. And so I write about this topic regularly at MarketWatch as my day job. And I have a button on my website to ask me a question. If anybody
Oh,
wants to talk about anything or has any questions, I do my best to answer them. I have a newsletter where I answer questions, and I have my column where I answer questions. And so, if there's anything lingering in your mind or you have anything that you want to talk about, hit that button, ask me a question.
I love this. I didn't realize that. We are going to put that Ask Beth button on all of the links to this recording, but I think we'll be sending a bunch of folks over there to that have a lot of questions that could not only help them, but it could help many others out there. All right, folks. Beth, this has been an amazing conversation. Like I said, you can see all the links to how to get in touch with Beth, how to order the book. But this has been a great first conversation. I look forward to our next conversations on this very important topic.
Thank you so much.
Right.